Welcome everybody to this World Satsanga held on the 28th of November 2020 in conjunction with Kevin Moore and The Moore Show. And as normal, I shall invite you all to see Kevin's YouTube channel and look at the now myriad episodes of They Call Us Channelers, which is a fantastic opportunity to see the difference in quality between different individuals who are connected to or purport to be connected to the greater reality in some way, shape or form. Brilliant series, and I hope it goes further than just the YouTube channel. I hope it goes on to things like National Geographic and other channels, terrestrial and non-terrestrial channels we have on mainstream television. Okay, so let's have a look at the agenda for this Satsanga. The first one is actually answering a question, which I think is a really good question from one of my readers, and it's based upon the first chapter of the curators called the Mythbusters, where Source Entity 1 mentions that real changes are going to happen in the last 10 to 15 years, or changes happening. And the question is, what are those changes? The next part of that is obviously the questions that have been sent in. There's quite a number of questions this time, some really good questions. I had a quick glimpse today as I was collating them into a document that goes off to that wonderful lady US who does the transcriptions as well. Because the questions actually don't get edited, so if there's any mistakes in there, you see the mistakes from the question writer as well, which is so it keeps it unbiased, so to speak. And then we're going to do a meditation at the end to change one's belief system away from what we currently believe or currently work with or think we know. Okay. Well, actually, let's go to the first part, then let's talk about the Mythbusters and the real changes happening in the last 10 to 15 years, what those changes were. I have to be honest, I looked in the book on that chapter called the Mythbusters, and bearing in mind that the Curators was finished quite some time ago, I don't tend to remember the content of certain chapters. So sometimes if there's a question based upon a chapter or a section within a chapter, I tend to have to sometimes go back into that book and have a look and see what the actual meanings were. And I couldn't see anything about the changes that happened in the last 10 to 15 years. It doesn't mean it's not there, it's just I couldn't see it there and then. But it may well be that the question is based upon another part of the Curators that refers to Mythbusters. So it's quite strange that I can't find it. But having said that, it's quite good because it means that I'm having to do some channeling to understand what those changes were. And as it happens, prior to this recording, I did a little bit of logging into the greater reality or meditating on the greater reality to understand what the changes were. And there's further changes as well. And some of those changes we're going to incorporate into the meditation for next Satsanga, for the Satsanga in December, and maybe even a lecture in January, because we've already got the lecture sorted out for December, which is another good question that needs to be answered in the form of a lecture. So the things that have been happening in the last 10 to 15 years are people's understanding in terms of who and what they are. Now we have pockets of people that slot into various different categories. There are those who are truly immersed in their incarnation, can't see beyond that, don't want to see beyond that, and are happy with who and what they are, which is perfectly fine, because we've all gone through this, and sometimes we will go through it again. But this is fine. These people just respond and react to the world events or localized events in their current incarnation, and the shall we say, the interaction with their friends or their work colleagues or the people that they see as part of a hobby that they may have. So they have their own little local reality associated with that, or becomes part of a larger reality, so to speak. These people don't tend to react at all to anything that's happening around them. They're not aware of any changes, they're not aware of any reality changes. Then there's people who are the backfill people, and there's a question based upon the backfill people, and so I'll leave that as it is, but basically backfill individuals are on the increase as people start to ascend the frequencies, irrespective of the overall frequency of the Earth dropping. It's still dropping, but not dropping so far, and I'm starting to see that it's the tail end of the drop has happened because there's lots of things that are happening around us that are starting to show this. Now, you might think that looking at the world stage and in terms of the leaders that we have, and some of those leaders are all out of the same mould, that this isn't happening. But my understanding and what I'm seeing now is that this is happening, and there's a change taking place. Certainly there's a change taking place within the individuals who vote for certain leaders to start to recognise that a different type of leadership, a more responsible leadership, is required. So those who are starting to see beyond the sort of the veil of deceit, of promise without creating that which has been promised there, the never-ending carrot in front of us. And there's those who are seeing everything. And so we've got this three-tier approach where there's people who are, or four-tier approach where there's the people who are immersed in their incarnation, the backfill people who are also immersed in their incarnation, but tend to be aligned to or work with lower frequency thoughts, behaviours and actions, because backfill people are a different soul group, a different quality of sentience, and they've only recently been allowed to incarnate into the earth environment to support everybody else trying to ascend and move out of the gross physical frequencies of the first three frequencies and move into the fourth frequency. So they're being allowed to experience individualized free will to help them. But because it's their first incarnations, they get pulled into the low frequency thoughts, behaviors and actions associated with being here. And then we have those who are starting to become aware a bit and starting to be dissatisfied with what they're experiencing in terms of the leadership and in terms of how people interact around them. And then we have people who are becoming very, very aware. So these are the things that these are the changes. And certainly the changes that have happened are the change in terms of one reality being swapped for another reality. So that's the major change that's happened in the last sort of 10 to 15 years, is that we were, in the last 15 years, we were very, very progressive in terms of our spiritual approach. We started to understand things more. We started to become more involved with spiritual practices. We started to look at ourselves more. We started to use the observer self more. We started to become more service orientated towards others. And then we got to this idea of the 12th of the 12th 2012, where we were all going to ascend. And this was a bit of a stumbling block, because although we were continuing to work in the right way, we failed to understand that in the progression that we were having, which was gradual and individualized, the actual state of beingness or awareness that we were supposed to achieve on the 12th of the 12th 2012 was achieved in the February of that year. And because we didn't see this progression happening and going past it, because it's a gradual change, and with things that are gradual changes, we get used to them slowly, so we get normalized to them or acclimatized to them. When we expect to see a knife edge change or a cliff edge change, upwards or downwards, and we don't get there, then we get disgruntled, we get disappointed, we become disaffected by those things that we thought were going to happen, and the leaders that are broadcasting these things that were going to happen. If you remember in the previous Satsanga, I said there's a lot of people who wrote books about this and created quite a career on the 12th of the 12th 2012, and when this big change didn't happen, because it was happening slowly individually, then a lot of non-spiritual people or the spiritual critiques, so to speak, came out and made a meal out of saying that all this spiritual stuff is complete rubbish, because if this was going to happen, it would have happened and we would have all noticed it. The fact is that it happened so slowly that we didn't notice it, so we're all getting used to it very slowly, and therefore normalised to it, wasn't recognised at all. And so the impetus surrounding our spiritual progression started to slow down. And so this is the thing that's happened around us. These are the things, and this is why we haven't noticed it, because as we rise up slowly, we can also go down slowly. Rising up slowly is hardly noticeable. Going down slowly is definitely not noticeable. So those who do notice how our progression is are usually those who step outside of themselves. using the well-known and well-trodden path of the observer self to see how they're performing and how they're responding to others, and try to keep control of how they respond to others, and also see how the world is responding to others and how compassionate we're feeling and how we're dealing with things, or how certain individuals or certain levels of or groups of individuals around the world are not responding in the right way and are becoming more aggressive and therefore low frequency as a result of it. So we start to understand that from a perspective of going down the frequencies, because we get complacent, and even if we think we've made it, we stop to work on ourselves, we can start to slip down the frequencies. It's actually easier to, and we don't notice it so much unless again we are using the observer self. So it's a bit like falling asleep. So moving into another reality that we've done is something that happens without us noticing. So what's happened is we went through certain leadership eras, and those leadership eras worldwide were actually quite enlightening and quite encouraging. And then things didn't happen, or the promises that they tried to get through in terms of the changing way we interact with each other from a governmental position, which would feed down into the general population, started to fail because there was too many blockages in the way, and maybe the changes were too big. Then we start to think it's not going to happen. And also we start to, if we are happy with our spiritual progression, we start to think we can take a little holiday with it. For instance, we don't meditate so often, for instance, or we can have a day off meditation today, or we can have a day off doing our Kriya Yoga, or have a day off doing our traversing the frequencies, or have a day off doing some of the work we do with our Buddhism, for instance, and all these different things. So the changes going down frequency happen in a very covert way, and it's like falling slowly asleep at the fireplace at night. You're very comfortable, you have a nice meal, for instance. Maybe some people have had a nice glass of wine. You feel very relaxed. You start to very slowly fall asleep because the temperature's right. You're not feeling cold, you're not feeling too hot, and maybe you're a bit tired as well. And the body's working hard, so you need to digest the food and the alcohol, so you're also feeling very, very sleepy as well. And so you fall asleep and you don't know about it. And this falling asleep is a good example of how we start to lose our ability to be spiritually aware. We fall asleep slowly, and our ego takes over, thinking, I can now start to be back in the driving seat again, controlling every aspect of this particular incarnation and be in the dominant position again. So it starts to justify our desires not to work on ourselves, not to do meditation, and not to think, behave, and act in a responsible and service-based way. So we start to all fall asleep slowly. And so this falling asleep allows us to think, it'll be okay. We don't need to worry about this. We don't need to fight for this cause. We don't need to justify these new causes being in place. We don't need to have charitable giving to help these causes. And so all these things start to fall apart, and it starts to allow other things to come into its place. Things that are low frequency thoughts, behaviors and actions start to become the norm. And so when somebody said to us, we're going to provide this for you and provide that for you, and we can do this and we can do that, and we don't need rules and regulations to govern us, then we start to accept it. And we start to think that the words, which are basically lies and have no basis for their ability to be, shall we say, actioned and completed, start to be taken as being something that can be actioned and completed and will happen. And even when they fail, we still accept them for what they are. So we've moved from one particular reality to another, where we're accepting failure as being the norm, and it's okay. Now, clearly we sometimes do fail in certain things, and we learn from those failures and we improve ourselves. But when we don't learn from the failures and we think it's okay to continue to fail, or to continue to accept that certain leadership groups around the world are failing, or failing us and themselves, then we start to perpetuate their presence. And so one of the big changes that have happened in the past 10 to 15 years is the movement from a more higher frequency reality to a lower frequency reality. And when we move from one reality to another, we generally don't know. We just moved into it. And then suddenly we might think to ourselves, how did we get to this point where all of this happened in one go? How did we get to the point where these different leaders who are not helping humanity at all got into power? How did we allow it to happen? How did we allow ourselves to move into a position where we're no longer thinking, behaving and acting in a spiritual way, in a service-based way, in a compassionate way? How are we allowing these atrocities all over the world to happen? How are we allowing how we affect the environment to happen? How are we allowing the desecration of life-giving rainforests around the world to happen? How are we allowing the mass slaughter of animals to happen? Because we find it acceptable. Low frequency thoughts, behaviours and actions are almost at caveman level of understanding. Our sentience starts to become tainted by just simple low frequency intelligence. And so we don't see what's happening. And these are the big changes these are the major changes that are happening. These are the big things that are happening around us. And so things like the second coming of Christ, for instance, great leaders coming, etc., start to be misinterpreted and misunderstood. And so things that aren't correct are broadcast in spiritual ways, which confuse us and confuse people and start to create this condition where we no longer know, so we start to believe, and then we no longer believe, and then we ignore. And this is what's happening. These are the big things that are happening, and this is probably why it's been this question was aligned to the Mythbusters, because all of these things are busting what we thought were going to happen and showing a different reality, and therefore breaking breaking the myth that we're going to have the second coming of Christ, for instance, or we're all going to get Christ consciousness. There are times when we have to go downhill to really appreciate what we've lost, and there are individuals who are being born on the earth, the so-called white children, as I've been told to call them, that are put in a position to help us understand ourselves and work with ourselves in different ways, and are going to help us move forwards. So the changes that are going to happen later over the next, I'm being told, 15, 20, 30 years are us becoming more mature and no longer accepting that people can just exist without a role in society, that we need to have leaders who are capable, that are working for the general population and not working against it, and they are working it, and we are all starting to work in a service-based way, and that we need to understand what it means to maintain our environment. We need to look after the oceans, we need to look after how we deal with pollution, we need to look after how we deal with the environment, we need to look after how we deal with the population, and control the population in a way that we can still sustain ourselves whilst also maintaining the ability for the earth to provide for us, not just in terms of crops and merchandise we can buy in the shops, but in terms of the air that we breathe and the water that we can drink, because air and water is the staple part of the metabolism of the body, of the human body, and some of the other entities who are here at higher frequency as well. So the changes are going to happen later are going to be more of a self-realization and a recognition that we need to operate in a more responsible way and employ leaders who are going to be responsible and have a proven track record that they can be responsible for us. And the things that have happened in the last 10 to 15 years are basically that we've allowed ourselves to move from a very spiritual state, or getting towards a very spiritual state, a very exciting level, and then we've taken our eye off the ball and dropped down. So the changes that have happened are real changes in terms of what happens globally and individually when we think, behave and act in certain ways. Now this is subtle. This is a subtle thought process that we need to understand that the way we think, behave and act affects everybody, and affects how we interact with others. It affects how we affect with the environment. It affects how we move forwards with the quality of the environment and the animals that exist with this environment, and understand the importance of it. So removing ourselves from being the selfish human race into being the caring, sharing, accommodating, working for the general population, not just the humans but the entire animal and plant population of this planet, is the next set of changes that's going to happen. We've already had people in various different positions of authority state our position, spiritual and environmental and governmental, and now we need to start to work with them and other individuals, irrespective of how young they are, to work together with them to try to make a change in how we exist. And this means that we need to work with ourselves and those who govern us, and maybe change those who govern us to those who think, behave and act in the right way, to make sure that we can globally, not in a devolved state, work together. Part of the devolution of humanity is one of those changes that allows us to go down the frequencies. We're going back into being isolated, separate little individualised units, little countries. Removing ourselves from unions, removing ourselves from United States or United Kingdoms. We need to come back into recognising that we're one planet with a population that is worldwide, irrespective of whether there's a religious tendency, irrespective of whether there's a different skin colour or a different culture. We're one human race, and this is what's going to happen in the next few years, next 15, 20, 30 years, where we're going to start to understand that we've got to start thinking globally and not just thinking about our own backyard. So the changes in the past 10 years, 10, 15 years have been the rise and the complacency and the fall and the advent of a substitution of a reality. And then the next 15, 20, 30 years is the recovering of this and the becoming more mature whilst incarnate, and spiritually mature as well. Well, I hope that helps answer that question. A bit longer than expected, and probably not in the same direction as expected as well. So I apologise for that, but I don't apologise for the message that's coming over and what it means to us, because we do change realities and we don't know it. But some of us do sense it, and some of us do start to question how we got here. And these questions need to be followed through, and that's the only way we can progress and go further. So, okay, so let's have a look at the questions that we have, and there's questions from 3 people. First one's from FN, and it's one basic question really, and the question goes as follows. Sadhguru of India says one day everything will be accomplished by machines, meaning artificial intelligence. He says that this is great because everybody will be on holiday. When you look at the event spaces, do you also see the same? Once upgraded, AI replaces human beings. Are we looking into or working on upgrading our consciousness and live peacefully? Within 100 years, will survival be a non-issue? In 100 years, will we be solely investing or focusing on human consciousness upgrades? We won't get a human consciousness upgrade through artificial intelligence. We may get functions of our ability to be augmented by, or shall we say, replaced with some form of mechanical, electronic, software-based programming, if we need to have augmentations to our ability to remember things, store things, or body parts removed and replaced due to disease. That's going to happen. And certainly in terms of the bigger machines that we employ to enable us to work things out, compute things, and travel around the world will also become more and more complex and more reliant upon more complex and more, shall we say, fluid methods of computational programming. So this will happen. But if you remember, those of you who are a bit older, have a bit more experience on this planet, will remember that a long time ago there was a big thought process that computers will make human existence easier. And it's quite obvious that it hasn't. It's created more work. And so the advent of everything being accomplished by machines, making life easier, is actually, I really feel, to be an incorrect proposition and an incorrect thought process of what the future is going to be. If everything is done for us, we get lazy. We need to interact properly with the environment. We need to be part of the environment and meditate with the environment and help the environment be as it's supposed to be and exist with it. And we can't, machines won't let us do this. Machines will just substitute certain functions and make us lazy in certain ways. And also in some ways they'll give us more work to do. So I don't see machines being the way to increasing our human consciousness. That's something we've got to do within ourselves. We can use machines to help us create changes to our environment that puts it back to where it should be, and we can use machines to put us in a position where maybe the surface of the earth is maintained as environment and we exist below the earth, or we exist in areas that are specifically interactive with the environment in a biologically correct way. So we probably won't live in situations where we have concrete houses and high-rise blocks of flats. We might live in a way where our habitat is more biological. So I think that there's a possibility that the machines will help us in this instance to do these things. We're not going to be on a lifelong holiday. That's not conducive to us being able to work properly. We need to be able to interact with each other. We need to be able to interact with the environment. And that also means how we interact with the greater reality. We're not going to get in a position where everything's done for us so we can meditate all day. It would be a good thing to be able to meditate all day, but we need to interact with others, we need to train others, we need to help others, we need to be of service to others as well. And interacting with us all, the interaction at the human level, is the way in which we're going to progress. Being given a position where we don't have a responsibility creates lack of responsibility. So I don't see that this is a correct premonition of how we're going to move on, because at the end of the day, we need to be responsible for everything we do, and that includes everything that machines would do. If we gave them ultimate freedom to do what they wanted to do, we'd need to maintain responsibility for that as well. Okay. Next question is from OM, and there's a few here actually, which are quite good. And then there's a whole group from US. First question is, would you share some of your techniques to shut out any stray thoughts and have more efficient meditations? Firstly, if you've got any work you need to plan for it, write it down, forget it until you've done your meditations. So make sure that when you're meditating, that you don't have the shopping list of jobs to do. Okay, so that allows you to concentrate your time on simply meditating. Secondly, the tried and tested methods of using mantras works really well. Like, for instance, with SRF, they use Hong Saw, which you breathe in, you mentally chant Hong, like Hong. You don't say it verbally, you mentally chant it. When you breathe out, you say Saw, Saw. And you correlate those mental chants with your natural breathing. You don't try to breathe. And this gives you a focus. And it's important to do this because the Hong Saw technique in this instance, and the chanting of Hong Saw, is basically a way of saying I am one with the source is one with me, I am the source. Or my Father and I are one, or God and I are one. And so that's one way of doing it. And also concentrating on breathing coming into the lungs and going out through the lungs is also another way of focusing your attention. So this is the best way to do it, is to concentrate on something and trying to perfect it. and that focuses your concentration and stops stray thoughts coming in. Okay, next part of this is when I'm doing Satsanga meditations, I often feel and hear some sort of tiny sparks or small popping sounds like soda bubbles in my aura. What are they and why do they make sounds? Basically, you're hearing the energy. You're starting to move up the frequencies when you're doing the meditations, and you're starting to feel and hear the movement of energy, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're hearing this, fine. Don't rely on that as being a, for want of a better word, a prerequisite for achieving a certain level of enlightenment or a certain level of meditation. Move beyond it. Just notice it as a certain milestone on a certain level of frequential level that you're achieving through meditation. So it's good. Some people feel tingling. Some people feel tingling in the spine, the Kundalini energy moving up and down the spine. Some people feel temperature changes. Some people feel as if they've moved totally out of their body. All these different things are just milestones on the way to entering into samadhi, or transcendental state, or transcending the human form state of connectivity. Okay, next question is, in the past Satsanga you mentioned Indian gurus and other healers can take on board other people's karma. They take some of their karma on behalf of them. How could that be possible? Is karma so dense in energy that it can be treated as an object and split in half and share? In effect, it's taking on board the responsibility for that karmic link between one person and another. That's one thing. And it's also increasing their frequencies by removing some of their lower frequency as well. So yes, it can be, shall we say, treated as being an object and split in half. But it's more to do with increasing their frequency so that they can start to see who and what they are. It's removing that connectivity that's created through low frequency existence to the low frequency environment of the gross physical. So that's, and therefore, gurus do this by their students being close to them. Some sleep in the same bedroom, or even the base of the bed, and it's really a case of that helps them raise their frequencies. So removing the karma is twofold. One is removing the links, taking on board the links of the individuals and dissolving them by seeking forgiveness on behalf of the students or giving forgiveness on behalf of the students. And it takes a very evolved individual to do this. And the other is raising the frequencies of the students. So the karmic link in terms of being attracted to low frequency thoughts, behaviours and actions as a function of being in the gross physical is dissolved or removed because the guru gives the students an increase in their frequencies as well. So the next question is, how does karma look like to you? Is it visually seen when you look at some people's auras and energy bodies? Well, basically, I don't see karma. I know it's there, but I do see links between people. I see links between souls in this incarnation and their previous incarnations, their hang-ups, for example, and how they feel about being involved with certain individuals and certain environments, and also see links between them and other people as well. So I see the karmic link as like a energy rope, if you want to call it that, between individuals, and I see it between those individuals and themselves in previous incarnations. But in terms of their karma, I just know it's there, and I just know that I can dissolve it for feeding energy to them, or assisting them in becoming more aware of their ability to be grateful for the experiences they may have that they may have thought were negative. And then forgiving those individuals and forgiving themselves, or forgiving themselves for responding in a certain way, or just simply dissolving for them. It's not as simple as saying dissolving it. It's quite complicated action, and an Indian guru would also say it's quite complicated. But basically, I just know it's there. I don't see it as such, other than I do see the links. I just feel that they have karma, and I understand how it could be there as well. Okay, so and how I feel it or know it it comes in a number of different ways. It can be visual, it can be in terms of the links, or it could be just it's generally a state of knowingness or clairsentience. Okay. Next question is, when some gurus are levitating, which frequency are they in? They are moving into a level that is in between the third and fourth frequency. So they're not in the fourth frequency, but they're not fully in the third frequency. And basically they're just making their gross physical form less dense. And when it's less dense, it's not attracted to the gravitational field of the Earth so much. Okay, so the next question is, do crystals or materials evolve faster if worked with humans rather than being part of the planet? Yeah. The human soul and the human true energetic self, or Godhead, or oversoul, or higher self, are a different quality of sentience. They have a different sentient quotient as well. And I've explained this in the last Satsanga. And anything that's has a lower sentient quotient, or lower quality of sentience being a function of evolution. Sentient quotient is a function of how much sentience is contained within a certain body or group of energies. That's those objects or animals or souls that interact with human souls are affected by the higher frequencies, but moreover the quality of sentience associated with those souls. So crystals, minerals, plants, trees, animals, backfill people are all affected by the human interaction, the loving interaction. And if we love an animal, it's a massive gift to them, because it really does accelerate their own evolution. Okay, so anything that we interact with, we give it love, and we appreciate it, and work with it in a way which isn't detrimental to it, makes it evolve. Okay, next question. In the History of God, page 409, it says the major earth chakras are positioned in each of the following places: north and south poles, the centre of the earth, along the equator, in a north, south, east and west configuration, as if looking down the North Pole. Some chakra locations are marked by the location of old world monuments, such as the pyramids in Egypt, Machu Picchu in Peru, the sunken temple, which is the Temple of the Sun, off the coast of Japan, and the Temple of Angkor in Cambodia. I have two questions on this. How the chakra of the centre of the earth looks like. Human chakras are normally in the shape of a cone, opening outward. Does the centre chakra of the earth open to a specific direction, or is it spherical? It's basically a spherical. It's basically a sphere. And that sphere is a nexus of all of the junctures of energy lines between the other chakras. So that particular chakra can cope with a number of different frequencies concurrently. Chakras, we have major chakras in the human body, minor chakras, and then mini chakras. Minor chakras are things like those on the hands we use to heal. But the chakras on the earth are all already connected to the energies associated with the physical universe and, of course, the multiverse. And so they don't need to have the same configuration as the human body. In fact, chakras on different incarnate vehicles, not specifically the animal versions, but in different locations within the physical universe, have different appearances depending upon the frequency that they're in, and as a result of that, the frequencies that they're dealing with. So the cone-shaped chakra is just simply a function of the frequencies that the gross physical aspect of the human form needs to work with. The chakras can have different shapes and sizes and ways in which they configure vortices. In the instance of the Earth, it's a sphere that's got the connections to all the different energy lines that go to the other chakras, things like ley lines, for example, and it just absorbs everything. The Earth is a pan-frequential body, so all the different chakras absorb all the energies at the same time. Okay, so the next one is which Earth chakras are equivalent to human chakras. Since they are not vertically located like human chakras, I have a hard time visualizing which one is which. Having 5 chakras in the middle is really confusing. Yeah, as I just said, each of the chakras is a pan-frequential receiver of energy. So whereas the human chakras are specifically aligned to one particular frequency within the physical universe. So we have 7 chakras, or 7 groups of chakras. So they deal with the first 7 groups of frequency associated with the physical universe, which are also the first 7 frequencies associated with the multiverse. The Earth ones don't. They're pan-frequential. So those chakras work with every frequency. Okay, so each of those chakras deals with all 12 frequencies associated with the physical universe. Hence the spherical nature. And I'm pleased that OM made a comment about, is it spherical? Because being spherical, it's omnireceptive, so to speak. Okay, good, fantastic. So next set of questions are from US, and there's a lot of questions here. And so I have to work through them. First question is, in recent years we've seen a movement away from democracy towards more autocracy in several countries, such as Venezuela, Ecuador, Bolivia, Turkey, Hungary, Poland, India and the US. The autocratic ruling parties disrespect political opponents and minorities and encourage political violence. So please explain. Is this what leads to the scenario described in the Earth in 150 years, where the whole Earth world is frozen, resources depleted, and the people are focused on survival? This is, basically in these autocratic situations, because the leader is breaking the rules and doesn't care about the rules, the population behave in the same way, and this so-called freedom of thought and speech starts to become completely selfish, and therefore we don't care about the environment. So this particular scenario is a potential future if we allowed this particular reality to continue, and basically it's going to put us back a lot in terms of our technical and spiritual advancement. Okay, is this a result of the current authoritarian autocratic political climate moving forwards by even more countries? Well, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 5 countries above and beyond that list that was given to us a moment ago that are going down the same road. And when we start to realise and start to, as a collective, recognise that those individuals that have found their way into power because of our complacency aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, then we'll start to move away from this. So it's a potential reality that we can go into, and yes, it is a result of that. It's a result of boom and bust, basically. Everything's there. Oh, it's no longer there anymore. Well, you wanted it. So these autocratic leaders will even blame the population for putting them there in the first place. So the populace can't win unless they remove these individuals and we all start to behave in a coherent and responsible way. Does the scenario described happen regardless of the political climate due to lack of resources and population growth? Basically, it'll happen if we allow ourselves to be, what's the word for it? Have a lack of responsibility, and we allow ourselves to not be aware of and not change the way we think, behave, and act, and how we work with our resources. Again, it's all linked together. If we think we're free to do anything we want to, then we're free to waste what we've got, then we'll do it. We need to understand that we need to change the way we think, behave and act. And if we go down this route of, well, our leaders can do it, so can we, then we'll go all the way down and everything will be wasted. If yes, what year is the year of no return, when there is no turning back the clock on the earth? We're being given plenty of alarm bells right now. Some of the work that Sir David Attenborough has been talking about the loss of animal and plant life, the number of species that are going into extinction is remarkable and disturbing and scary. The pollution pockets on the Pacific Ocean are increasing. That's scary. The amount of landfill rubbish we're just digging into the ground is scary. Putting nuclear waste into the ground is scary. We need to find out how to do this properly. So we're already being given the alarm bells. Do you see any major changes that could prevent the Earth going into this depressing scenario in 150 years? We need to allow people who are responsible to come into power, irrespective of their age. I mean, people like the white children need to come into power to be able to work with this. We need to give up our greed. Okay, and the next question is difficult because there's that many different scenarios. It's difficult to pin it down. Please be specific, i.e., specific year and specific leader in X country who could make a change. To anybody lined up for the community at large support and backup. Well, it's difficult, but we need to recognise these individuals. Greta Thunberg, for example, is one of them. We need to understand that individual and what she can mean to us to make sure that her role is quite significant for the environment. And there are others for the way we work with technology, and there are others that we can work with for spiritual advancement as well. And there are those that work in the background, of course, clearly. But they're there now. They're there now. All we need to do is recognise that they're there and what they're doing. So we can start now. And although I think from memory, I can only remember 5 white children that I've noted or discovered, and some of them aren't even active yet. There's 1 or 2 that are active, and Greta Thunberg is a walk-in. So watch that lady, that young lady. Is going to be very influential. Okay, so that's to stick a stake in the ground. That's one of the stakes, and the countries where she comes from is obviously in the northern areas. I can't remember where she comes from now. It's like Sweden or something like that, or Finland. But that person is going to be somebody to watch. Okay, and also, I mean, I know people have got some mixed feelings about Barack Obama, but he's there in the background still, and there's a lot of things going on with him. And it's interesting to note that the president-elect of the US was Obama's vice president for 8 years. And it's interesting, we've had this blip with Mr. Trump, and now we're back into the potential of being within a scenario where we've got a responsible leader in power again, and there'll be lots of guidance from Barack Obama as well. So interesting times there. And also we're getting certainly within the UK, we're starting to get people who are agitators removed as well. And I feel that again at some point we're going to have, because we've been exposed to them, we're starting to realise that words of promise that have no meaning and no depth we're going to start to work on our leadership roles again and who we need to put into place, because it's a worldwide thing, and there's everywhere, every country in the world at the moment has a problem of some sort, and so we need to understand that the leadership needs to be those who are looking to work on behalf of the human race, but more importantly the earth and the human race. Okay, and the final question: is this happening sometime in some timelines or event streams, or is it a more general trend with humanity in the next 200 years in the main timelines? I'm seeing around 60% of the timelines being in the wrong direction. We have the ability to get down a central series of event streams or realities, say centrally placed. These are the ones we should go down, and everything else is a diversification. So let's say 30 to 40% of the event streams now, because of course everything can change, are the way we should be going, and everything else is often a tangent and isn't efficient and creates a condition that is not going to be very good for the human race. Okay. Next question is: the number of backfill people have been increasing steadily over the years from the original 8% of the population to an alarming 41% in 2020. You said they are located mostly in the Western world. Please explain. Does the US have a larger population of backfill people than, say, China or Russia or Europe? And how does that affect the world's superpower relations over the next 30 years? So, where we have leaders who are not being properly responsible for who and what they are, and the people that they're governing, is where most of the backfill people are going, because they are being allowed to exist in an area where they are, shall we say, being accepted easily. Okay. Now, in countries that are more progressively understanding the self and how they need to change the self to work with the environment, more eco-friendly societies, you'll find that the backfill people won't be tolerated. And even backfill people who are incarnating into these areas, they will be affected by a higher frequency thought, behaviour and action. So they don't go down, they're not allowed to augment the descent of the frequencies by easily being attracted to it, easily being addicted to materialism. They are affected by high frequency thoughts, behaviours and actions. People being more service orientated in terms of being of service to others, being more environmentally aware and active, working on technology that's going to benefit us, not take things away from us, not make us less responsible. And so they're also affected positively as well. So although the appearance of backfill people is more prevalent in areas where the leadership is quite frankly ineffective and is putting those leaders in a state of everything benefits them rather than the general populace, that's where they're most visible. Actually, they can also be invisible because they're affected in a positive way in societies or countries where the overall population is a more caring and sharing and spiritually aware and environmentally aware group of individuals as well. So you don't see them so often in that case because although they're there, you don't see how fast they can descend because they're being held up frequently by those around them. Okay. Final question. In New Age circles, they talk about Christ consciousness in the sense that some people come from the Jesus or Yeshua soul group and bring high frequencies to the planet. Please explain, is that a particular soul group or group of souls or chosen people, or does it include anybody who is able to see the higher self, i.e. become self-realized and embody higher frequencies into the human form? Christ consciousness is a statement. It's a statement of beingness. It's misinterpreted as being, oh, my lineage is from Christ, my lineage is from the Buddha, my lineage is from Socrates, my lineage is from blah blah blah. Christ consciousness is simply a pure level of state of beingness that allows for self-realization. It's a description of a state of consciousness that we can all get to. Okay? It's not specifically chosen people. It's people who are working on themselves to better themselves and purify themselves so they're not affected by low frequency thoughts, behaviours and actions that create an addiction to being in this particular environment. So they're able to navigate through their incarnation without being affected by materialistic thoughts, behaviours and actions, for example. So they don't so New Age circles don't tend to understand what they're talking about sometimes. I mean, some of the stuff is really good, but some of the stuff is misdirected. And so a Christ consciousness is not particularly aligned to a particular soul group or a particular group of souls that come from a particular true energetic self or higher self or oversoul or Godhead. It is simply a state of beingness associated with purity and clarity of connectivity with the greater reality, with one's higher self or Godhead or oversoul, or true energetic self. To be Christened means to be purified. And when we're pure, we're not attracted to or need to identify with the frequencies associated with the gross physical. Okay. So when that happens, we know that everything around us is purely illusion that we create to experience various different things here. We create it all. We create everything that's here. And we can navigate around it. And that's something that some people can do and some people can't. And part of the way in which you can spot somebody who is on that road is that they become detached from everything around them. They may still have various different levels of material wealth, but they recognise that these are simply tools, for instance, or simply transient objects that can be used to help them move forwards and do the work and the role that they've got to do, which may be very spiritual, but may have to have very material tools around them to help them to do that. I mean, clearly money is one thing that some people need to have to do this. We're not in a position where we can wander around the land anymore and be supported by people like Jesus was, for example. But we can get to a point where we can generate income to support ourselves, so that we can then focus on the message that we're supposed to be giving to those around us. And getting to the point of being in that position and using it for the benefit of others is part of the generation of Christ consciousness. Christ consciousness is a state of self-realization. It's transcending the physical whilst being in the physical. Okay. So that's one way to think of it. Well, thank you for all of those questions, and I hope I've answered them. And I know I've not provided the level of accuracy that some people would like, but that's not possible because there's so many different variations of reality that we can access. It's just not relevant to focus on one particular one. Okay. So let's have a look at the meditation we've got to do. And that meditation is a meditation to change one's belief system. So let's sit nicely, and you might hear my creaky chair. I apologise for my creaky chair. It's a new chair, can you believe? Newish chair, it still creaks. Okay. So let's sit straight, with our back straight, the small of our back into the corner of the straight backed chair, with our feet flat on the ground and our palms placed uppermost on our upper thighs. And again, your closed eye vision should be focused on the location of the spiritual or third eye, which is in between the two eyebrows and above the bridge of the nose. And focus in a gentle way, don't strain. Now I want you to all recognise, as we very slowly start to detach from everything around us, create ourselves in a state of just pure thoughtlessness. We just are. We are just being. And I want you to remember that a belief system or a belief is something that we happen to take on board from somebody else as being the truth. but we haven't experienced that truth ourselves, either via observation or interactive experience. We can either have observational experience or interactive experience. If we don't have either of those two, we just take what somebody has said to us as being the truth without observing the truth ourselves. We tend to believe them. So to change this belief system, we just need to divorce ourselves from that belief. Whatever it is, whether we believe an individual or believe a set of circumstances, or the way in which individuals tend to interact with each other, or a reality. Let's just line up in our mind's eye, create a desk in front of us, which may already be there, maybe a table in front of us anyway, and line up in front of us all of our belief systems, all of those things that we've chosen to believe but don't know the truth about. Those things that we've chosen to think of as being true but actually have no proof for. Put them all on the table. Think of them as little pills, like aspirin pills on the table. Each pill is a belief system that you've got. You may have one or two, you may have 20. Doesn't matter how many you've got, just put them on the table as each as an individual belief that you're working with, but so far you've had no proof, no experiential proof, no observational experiential proof, or no interactive experiential proof that this belief system is true. Each of these pills, little white pills, represents an unvalidated statement. The belief system is an unvalidated statement because we haven't experienced it from an observational perspective and we haven't experienced it from an experiential perspective. Now I want you to also visualize in front of you. If you have trouble visualizing, by the way, use your mentally spoken words. Just speak your words mentally to create the same picture. Like I have a table in front of me. I've placed this pill in front of my table that represents this belief system. I've placed this pill in front of me that represents this other belief system. You can say that to create the picture. I want you also to create a visualization or use your mentally spoken word to achieve the same thing, that you have a beaker of water in front of you. And I want you to put each of those pills that represents a belief system into the beaker of water and watch it dissolve. As each pill dissolves, your link to, or need to, or desire to believe an unvalidated statement dissolves. You are effectively dissolving your dependence upon an unjustified, unvalidated, unproven statement. As it dissolves, it no longer exists. So you become totally neutral again. You have no opinion about the subject that the statement was about, the subject that the belief system was about. You've dissolved that statement. You've dissolved that unjustified or unvalidated statement that's created the belief system. It no longer exists. Your programming, your psycho-spiritual programming, is now in an unprogrammed state in this particular instance. If you have any more belief systems, put those pills in the beaker of water as well, and watch them all dissolve. Each of them has dissolved or is dissolving. Until eventually you have no belief systems, because there's no pills either on the table in front of you or in the state of being or becoming dissolved. And so now you have no belief systems, you have no desires to work with something. You've got no justification for it as being the truth. It's unquantified. You are completely neutral. You are completely unprogrammed. Now I want you to think about adding a change of thought process. I want you to just state to yourself that you're only going to work with that which has been proven to be correct. And that proof is based upon your observational experience or your personal interactive experience. That unless you can experience it yourself and work at that experience by observing it or interacting with it or manipulating it, it doesn't exist. So if somebody says something to you, or a group of individuals say something to you, or something you read on the internet or in the newspaper is presented to you, you just ignore it unless you can create a condition where you can experience it yourself, either observationally or from an interactional perspective. So you move away from a series of belief systems that have no justification for their existence. They're unproven. You've not experienced them in any way. You've not seen them, heard them, smelled them, tasted them, or interacted with them in some way. And you replace all of this with a desire to only know, not believe, that which you've experienced through observation and interaction. So that you're only dealing with the truth. This doesn't stop you from working on creating a condition where you're working towards generating an observational or experiential or interactive method of knowing about something. You could be in process of creating the justification for a statement's existence, and therefore moving it from a learning position to an observational or interactive experiential level of knowledge, not a belief. You can call it research if you wish. Tell yourself that you're only going to research that which you feel is interesting to you, that may be meaningful, and you'll use it and work with it up to the point of recognizing that you can observe it as a truth and interact with it as experiential knowledge, as a truth for you. So everything is work in progress. There is nothing which is somebody else's statement of which you've got no justification for its existence, because you've not observed it or you've not interacted with that, with the information, not interacted with that thing that that statement is about. So you may have a number of things that you want to observe for yourself, or experience for yourself, or interact with for yourself. When you can do these things, then you can state that they are your experiential knowledge. They may have been somebody else's belief system, but you rejected that belief system and neutralized yourself, reprogrammed yourself to find the truth behind the statement, not to just accept it, because somebody that you feel has the authority to state it is therefore worth trusting or believing. If they say something, work on yourself to put you in a position where you can observe for yourself and or interact with or experience for yourself as being the truth about a certain subject, a certain experience, a certain state of beingness. And then as whatever you've decided to work with becomes observed by yourself as being true and real, or interacted with as being true and real, or experienced therefore as being true and real, you can see that as being the generation or the manifestation of a new pill, for example, on the table in front of you. So take this away with you and neutralize yourself from all these different belief systems, and only recreate or manifest new pills when you've actually experienced or observed or interacted with that which you have been told in a statement as being a truth. It's only a truth when you've experienced it yourself. So this meditation is basically allowing you to eradicate or dissolve those belief systems and giving you a way in which you can create a number of experiential systems, knowledge-based systems, through observation, interaction, or experience. Okay, so you can use this meditation every time you want to dissolve a belief system and create an experiential, start to give yourself the authority to work on finding ways to observe the truth, experience the truth, or interact with the truth, to give you a knowledge-based system. Okay, so slowly open your, come into the room, back into the room, Slowly open your eyes. Take a drink of water to help ground you. And use this to create a new you that's based on truths and not suppositions and assumptions or beliefs. Okay, well, thank you very much for listening to this Satsanga, and thank you for interacting with it energetically, and thank you for listening to it, and look forward to working with you all again on the next one, which I think is the 19th of December. It's the week before Christmas week, I think. Let's have a look. Yeah, it's the 19th of December. So again, if you have questions, please send them in by the 12th. It'd be fantastic. And thank you very much for wanting to work on yourselves and help to provide a change in our direction. Namaste and God's love to you all.
Did you see the aliens in Crete?